Hey there, guys, what is going on? Welcome to Racing Insights. My name is Gail, and today we are here to do the 2026 Austrian Grand Prix rankings. Now, in this video, we're not only going to be ranking the drivers, we're also going to be ranking the teams. Now, the reason for that and the reason why I am doing that is because I feel personally that appropriating the blame of the team onto the drivers more often than not is a little bit wrong. I know that the drivers have their own say in certain matters, and of course they can do certain things that maybe the team doesn't want them doing, and therefore that's their fault. But I feel like the team also has some leeway in terms of how they executed the weekend with setup, practice running, in terms of plans, how the practice is going to go, how the weekend is going to go, strategy, and much more. So I feel like the teams do get a little bit of a blame, you could say, in how good or bad a weekend goes. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Is that the right way to go about it? Let me know. Obviously, if we do it again next week for Silverstone and beyond, I'll make adjustments accordingly. And of course, if you guys would like to see anything else in terms of a preview or review of a weekend, let me know in the comment section down below. Like I said, I'm doing this to try and talk to more people about Formula 1 and other forms of motorsport, so I would appreciate all of your guys' input in terms of how this channel goes as well. Now, before we get into this Austrian Grand Prix rankings, obviously I want to mention and discuss that there will be obviously the 24 hours of Spa review later today, and along with that I am going to be making a video on the 6 hours of Watkins Glen as well, for obviously covering the IMSA side of things as well. So be sure to check those out as well. Anyways, Formula 1 time. Let's talk about some Formula 1. And we're going to kickstart things off with the underdog team of the season, the young bucks of the team. Well, I say the young bucks of the grid. The drivers aren't young bucks. The team is, but the drivers are not. We're going to start off with Cadillac, and I have given Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas both a 6 and Cadillac a 3. Now, with Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas, I think they did a good job with the car that they were given, and what I mean by that is, with the upgrades that they were given, they were able to get good feedback to the team. They were able to obviously dial in a good setup to get them close to the likes of the Williams drivers. I think they were only like a few tenths, not even that much away from the Williams boys, which is a very good thing, considering, of course, new team, better than Aston Martin by a considerable margin, of course, performance-wise, and setting a good lap time shows that they're going in the right direction. Of course, the drivers do have a hand in that, of course, right? Obviously, being able to provide the feedback and whatnot, it's always helpful. Obviously, the team is the one that dictates how the upgrades really go overall, but the driver's input is also important as well. It's a factor no matter what anybody says. I've seen a lot of people discussing this when it comes to upgrades in general for Formula 1 teams, and there's two sides of the camp. One that just says that the driver's input is 100% always required, especially this happens in the case of Max Verstappen and Red Bull, right? Especially with the whole second driver curse that they've been having since Daniel Ricciardo. I think it's a little bit much in that situation. I don't think it's to that degree where the team dictates that, oh, this is what Max likes, we're gonna make the car for him. I don't think it's that way. On the other side, I've seen a lot of people saying, well, that the drivers don't matter when it comes to upgrades. The engineers, the people, who innovate, the people who research, they're the ones who are dictating the upgrade paths. The drivers don't have any input, and I disagree with that as well, because the drivers are the ones who are obviously in the simulators and on track, testing the upgrades and seeing actually where it's lacking. Is it specifically this part? Is it not this part? And so on and so forth. They have an input as well, so it's a factor. Maybe not like 100%, not 0%, maybe like a 10% factor. But anyways, Perez, Bottas did a good job with the tools they were given. Unfortunately for Cadillac, in my personal opinion, the tool that they gave the drivers was unreliable as hell. I mean, like, let's be serious here. practice sessions marred every single time for Perez. I don't think he had a single clean practice session whatsoever. And Bottas as well had some hiccups in practice, but the main issue came, of course, in the race itself, right? Where he and Perez both unfortunately retired within 4 laps. And that's not good enough. I mean, kudos to them. Delivered the parts to the drivers, got the car faster, but in terms of making sure those parts were reliable enough and making sure the overall package was capable of handling a weekend where, you know, you have to do 71 laps, they failed to do that. And in my opinion, that's not good enough. Again, this is something I said in my preview, and I'm going to reiterate it in this video. Cadillac are looking good. You know, I genuinely see improvement in terms of general operations when it comes to strategy and stuff, and along with that in terms of upgrades. But when it comes to reliability and just generally making sure parts don't fail, I feel like they're lacking somewhere. And I think this is maybe something to do with their material supplier or something along those lines. I have no idea. In fact, actually, funnily enough, today I was just about to start recording and I was just going through what is obviously known as X now, formerly known as Twitter. They have actually engaged and partnered up with 3M for their material science. Now, of course, it's probably just a sponsorship side of things, but having a name like 3M and just generally, you know, trying to get more partners, more well-known suppliers and partners when it comes to things like, you know, your components and stuff like that, I think that's equally important. So anything that helps towards obviously making sure the cars are able to run is very important. So hopefully they bounce back in Britain and obviously Silverstone, Silverstone being Britain. Hopefully they bounce back at Silverstone and, you know, they can do a good performance. I think, again, I feel like they did get hampered a bit by the temperatures and also just generally with the altitude of the racetrack, which definitely didn't help them. Less air, higher temperatures made it much more difficult. Let's see how obviously Silverstone goes. That'll be the real judge of how these upgrades really are. Because if they still struggle in Silverstone, which is at a much lower altitude, maybe lower temperatures. I've still not seen the temperatures for this weekend in Silverstone, but hopefully, hypothetically, lower temperatures as well. They might be able to perform better. We'll have to wait and see. Let's move on to Aston Martin now. Aston Martin, I've given Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso both a 5 and the team itself a 4. Now, I might change that to 5 for Aston Martin, and I'll come on to why in just a moment. But in the case of Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso, they do the bang average job they do every week now. I think until we get the car to be in a better position, I have no way of judging them in any way, shape, or form. I mean, the only time I can probably rank them higher is if they just manage to, I don't know, qualify a couple positions higher than second last and or maybe finish much higher as well. Like, I think Monaco Alonso, I would have probably given an extra point or two just because he managed to at least score a point. Maybe I would have given them 3 points even, gotten them to 8. But right now, it's just difficult to rank the Aston Martin boys. It's very, very challenging, and it's not fun actually just watching Alonso, especially in the, to be honest, more than Stroll, because it's just depressing to see a guy who's obviously wanted to stick around to see if he can actually still challenge for wins and podiums like a Hamilton, and we've not seen that since, well, the start of 2023, right? I think it was 2023. Yeah, 2023. Yeah, 2023. The start of 2023, where obviously he had that streak of podiums, had a near chance at winning in Monaco. Yeah, it's just a shame to see where Aston Martin has come from those highs of early 2023. It's a damn shame to see. In the case of Aston Martin as a team, I've given them a 4 because generally speaking, it's a shame that their upgrades are just non-existent. They're not bringing upgrades. It just feels like we're waiting. The earliest rumor that I heard was that it would come in Belgium. However, it has been confirmed today by Adrian Newey himself in a social media post that they're working on obviously an extensive rebuild of the car. They have accepted blame as well and fault for how the process has been generally last year to now with how the car has shaped. saying that when Newey came in, of course, they had already done a lot of the 2026 work, but then he came in and changed everything. That, of course, caused Honda to also struggle with the package as well, because at the end of the day, when Honda builds the specification of the engine and gearbox, obviously there's communication between the two, and they would have had the earlier plans. Now you come in and also Newey's changed that plans, and now you have to change the engine plans. It causes a lot of chaos, right? So obviously Aston Martin has also equal blame in the matter alongside Honda. Obviously, Honda did still under-deliver an engine and gearbox to the team, which is unfortunate, of course, considering how much success they've had over the last couple of years with Red Bull. But they've lost a lot of their team members to Red Bull's powertrains division. And generally speaking, with all of this malarkey that Aston's been doing, it's not helped them in the slightest. So I would give them at least an extra point for at least acknowledging and giving us an idea of when to expect Aston Martin to take a little bit of a leap forward. I've seen people already say like, oh, 2027, they'll be back and everything. It's not that easy. It's not easy at all. Of course, we have a lot of ADUO development opportunities for Aston Martin. I say ADUO development opportunities as if it doesn't even say it in the abbreviation itself. We do have ADUO for Aston Martin, but that does still take time because you have those hours to put into testing, figuring out if it actually work or not work, and then you can actually deliver the product. It's going to be very challenging for Aston Martin. I'm still going to give them a 4, though. I think overall it's just been a disappointing series of weekends, season even, I would say, for them, to be honest. It's really been disappointing. Audi. I think Audi have been pretty good overall, I would say. I feel like I've been a bit harsh with Audi when it comes to their rating at a 5. Maybe I could pump it up to 6. But I think generally Audi didn't do anything exceptional, but they didn't do an under-delivery either. I think the drivers were the ones who actually went above and beyond, to be quite honest, with this weekend. Gabby Bortoleto, unbelievable performance, I think, from him this weekend. Considering the form he was on up until this weekend where he was struggling, he was on the pace, if not faster than Hülkenberg through the weekend, was doing a really good job in the race, made some good overtakes as well, followed the safety pit strategies and everything really, really well. So I think it's a good 7 for him. Nico, on the other hand, definitely an underrated race overall. Still performed well, got ahead of Gasly as well. Obviously, Gasly was hampered a bit by his own strategy and issues he had later on in the race, which we'll talk about in just a moment when we get to Alpine. But overall, very good race from Hülkenberg as well. But I think just Bortoleto was better overall. Maybe even I could push that 7 to an 8, to be honest. Very, very solid race. Came 11th as well. One step away from the from the points paying positions, of course, right? I don't exactly know the time difference between Bortoleto and Lindblad in the last couple of laps. Somebody can go and check that out for me. It would be greatly appreciated. But if it was very close, then damn, it could have been points for him. It could have been his first points of the season, which would have been amazing for him, of course. Not his first points, actually. He's got points. Hülkenberg doesn't have points. I keep mixing the two up for some reason. Hülkenberg doesn't have points. Bortoleto has points, but it would have been extra points for Audi, which is obviously super important considering they're still stuck in 9th in the constructors' standings, of course, right? Like I said, Audi itself, before we move on to the next team, I want to just quickly touch on Audi. I don't think I saw much of them this weekend in terms of going above and beyond with a strategy, performance, practice running, or anything of that sort. They're still just doing their own thing. Of course, they introduced their engine upgrades last time around in Barcelona already, ahead of everybody else pretty much. So they're already taking those steps forward in, bringing upgrades, making sure they're taking advantage of the ADUO, of course, as well, alongside Ferrari. They're on the same, obviously, bracket, of course, right? They're in the same bracket. So, yeah, I think it's cool that Audi are doing their best they can. Just this week, didn't feel like anything extraordinary from them, but it didn't feel bad either. So it's a solid medium 5 for me in their case. Williams, again, it's a 5 for me personally. Sainz, I think, did a better job than Albon for the little he had. I mean, he was ahead. I think he was running 13th or 14th, I think, at the time of his retirement as well. generally showcasing a good level of performance. But again, reliability woes haven't helped Sainz. Albon, I think it's just self-inflicted pain, to be honest, generally speaking, from not only him, but the Williams team as well. They're just not there. The car is not there. They're still struggling with mishaps, issues, slow stops, whatever it may be. Is just a combination of varying factors that's not helping the team in any way, shape, or form. It's just anonymous central for Williams, I genuinely feel like whenever it comes to Williams, I forget they're in the race half the time, to be quite honest. At least with Aston Martin and Cadillac, you're like, oh my god, they're so far behind. Or in the case of Cadillac, they're so far behind, but they're catching, they're getting closer and closer to potentially, catching the rear of the back markers. Audi, same thing as well. New team, new sort of, manufacturer. You want to see how they're doing. With Williams, they're just anonymous. It's completely anonymous central with them. I'm hoping, again, with upgrades coming in the next few races, potentially for them, maybe they might be able to take a step forward to catch up to Racing Bulls and Alpine, but we're going to have to wait and see. And speaking of upgrades and the lack thereof, Haas. I think Haas have done a good weekend thus far, as far as I can tell, based on Behrman's performance primarily. That's why I'm giving Haas a 6, because they took advantage of the VSC, let Behrman pit for the first time during the VSC, hence why he was able to finish, I think it was 14th. But again, Haas are currently in a position where I just genuinely believe they are in struggle town. In terms of upgrades are not working. We don't know if they'll be able to get upgrades anytime soon because, of course, of budget cap and cost constraints that Haas has, right? More so than the budget cap, cost constraints for Haas is the major issue. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they're able to come back up from, of course, a disastrous set of couple of races, from coming from the highs of finishing like 5th, 6th, 7th, and all those points paying positions in the first 3 to 4 rounds of the season, to the last 4 rounds being in the dumps in 15th, 14th, 16th even sometimes. It's been a bit of a disaster for Haas as a whole. Esteban Ocon, I think, is the perfect example of, again, struggling in the sense of the car that he's been given is just not performing up to scratch, to be quite honest. It's a bit of a struggle for both drivers. Behrman came out of this weekend a little bit better just because of course, taking advantage of that VSC and generally driving a good overall race. So there is that for Haas at least. They were able to at least salvage a 14th. Of course, it's not still the points-paying positions they want to be in to, recapture the likes of Racing Bulls and Alpine and stuff like that to try and at least get some consistent points to, potentially get some more prize money at the end of the season. Now, Racing Bulls, let's talk about them. A really good race from them again. Double points finish, of course, for Racing Bulls. Lawson and Lindblad finishing in 9th and 10th respectively. Lindblad, I must have mispronounced it there. I feel like I did at least. Yeah, very good race overall. Lawson, I think, took the shine out of Lindblad, in my personal opinion. Really good, consistent race. Very well done. Overall, faster, consistently performing really well. Obviously, had a bit of a scare at the start of the race when his car was on fire, but thanks to, of course, the nature of the cooling system, brake system, and everything, when you're in clear air, you get more cooler air as well as a result of course, being outside. And obviously, the faster you go, more air comes in. The more air intake means you cool down. So thankfully, it was only the first 2 laps where there was that scare that he might have to retire, like Perez and Bottas. I genuinely was thinking that shit, these guys are gonna just drop like flies if 3 cars are going out due to overheating issues in 2 laps. I thought this was gonna be a war of attrition basically, but alas, those were the only real major overheating issues. Of course, we had Sainz and Stroll as well, but more or less everybody was able to come out unscathed, which is pretty darn good. But yeah, overall, fantastic performance from both drivers, and Racing Bulls gets a 7 from me. Again, good, consistent performance. Made sure to get the cars in at the right time, stayed ahead of the likes of, the Audis and Gasly and everything. Obviously, they got hindered, but again, you got to take advantage of what's given to you in terms of the situation and the strategy. And I think they nailed it for both drivers, which is exceptional and exactly what you need to do when you want to just try and get some good consistent points to catch up to the next team ahead of you, which of course is none other than Alpine. I have to give a 4 for both Alpine and Colapinto, and I'm not gonna lie, I would have given it even worse rating if Gasly hadn't done a generally good performance, to be quite honest. Colapinto finished, I think it was 16th or 17th. He was just miles behind Gasly. He's just not been on pace, and it's, again, like I said in the preview, the rumors of Alonso replacing him, I think, is far-fetched in my personal opinion. But the likes of Paul Aryan and other drivers waiting in the wings, I think Briatore is like literally about to put him on the chopping block. Honestly, it has been not great to watch, to be quite honest. On the other hand, with Gasly, really good performance overall. However, in the last stint, he did get hindered quite a bit by a ailing Charles Leclerc, just holding him back on fresh tires. And then, of course, Leclerc and Norris fighting. That also didn't help. Alpine didn't do Gasly any form of favors by pitting him when they did, because that also led to Hülkenberg overtaking him and staying ahead of him in the dying stages of the race. A shame for Gasly, who was doing a good job, but alas, hence why Alpine gets a 4 from me. I think overall a pretty miserable weekend in terms of just execution of strategy, placement of the cars, everything of the sort. It's been a poor weekend from them. McLaren, good race from them overall, I would say. I mean, again, taking advantage of the Mercedes power unit they have in the back, obviously, covering the fact that they still don't have a really good car. Obviously they were matching pace with Ferrari, but Ferrari were in the wrong direction. They were going backwards rather than forwards, more so than anything else. So I don't think it's anything to write home about when you're matching a Ferrari that isn't good at this specific circuit. But obviously you got to take what you can get. And I think in the case of Oscar Piastri especially, he took advantage more so than anybody else. I gave him an 8 because I think he did a fantastic job this weekend. Came fourth, of course, best of what anybody could do, basically, right? I think Max, Kimi, and George were in a league of their own. He was ahead of the Ferraris, took advantage of the ailing Charles Leclerc. Pit always 6 laps, 5 laps after him, making sure he had fresher tires. Obviously Hamilton, with the very weird 3-stop strategy that he tried doing, was able to stay ahead of him, was under pressure by Hamilton a couple of times, but managed it well, stayed ahead of him, used and managed the battery extremely well. A very good race from Piastri overall. I don't know if I'd give it a 9 or a 10. That's more so, I think I would put that down to the car, but still, I think a very good performance from him. Actually, you know what? I think I'm gonna give him. I think I've underrated him a little bit there. I think I'm gonna. Can I change it? Maybe. Let's see. I'd have to zoom in. But yeah, let me see if I can change it. Can I please change it? Thank you. I'd appreciate it. There we go. I'm gonna change it to 9. I think I'm going to change it to 9 overall, because I genuinely think that he did a fantastic performance, a really good job from him. And McLaren, I think, generally did a good job overall with the strategy, making sure that the cars got in and got out really well, making sure that, of course, in free practice 1 as well, with the hydraulics issue, got on top of it with the Mercedes engineers and made sure that Lando could get out in time for at least a little bit of running, which I do think hindered Lando a little bit. Obviously, he gets a 6 from my end. Obviously, not having any form of running doesn't help, and we're going to see this especially this weekend, of course, in Silverstone, with it being a sprint weekend again. It wasn't a great race from Lando. Fell behind Oscar. Obviously, it had a decent qualifying, but fell behind Oscar, fell behind Hajar. Got lucky with Charles's tires going away so much towards the end. Yeah, it wasn't a great race from Lando, to be quite honest. It wasn't the Lando we've been seeing the rest of the season. I mean, Lando's been on it the rest of the season. I think he's been a fantastic driver this season. But unfortunately, this race is a little bit of a blemish on that performance streak so far, personally to me at least. Now we move on to Red Bull. I think the big winners, one of the big winners, I should say, of this weekend. Max Verstappen gets a solid 9 out of 10, and Isaac Hadjar gets an 8 out of 10. Very, very good performance from the pair of them. Obviously, I would say Hadjar, finishing 7th or 6th, sorry, 4 positions behind Max, 28 seconds I think he was behind Max as well. You could say that that's bad, but I will still say, with the second driver performance being how it has been over the last couple of years, generally as well, being new upgrades and everything dialing in, obviously Hadjar is not a Max who can obviously get used to a car and just wring its neck really quickly, right? I think it's been a solid performance from him nonetheless. With Max, the only reason why I didn't give him a 10 is mainly down to that last qualifying run, realistically, to be honest. I think maybe I could have pushed it to a 10 still, but that last run where he crashed caused a lot of damage to the team. Of course, that inflicts their cost cap, which of course this year is not as much of an issue as some people might think, because remember, for this year they have actually increased the cost cap because it's new regulations as well. So teams have a little bit of leeway when it comes to, of course, crashing this year around, but still not obviously helpful in any way, shape or form. Added more pressure to the team to make sure the car was repaired correctly for the next day, and still managed to do a fantastic performance. I gave Red Bull an 8. I would have maybe pushed it to a 9 or a 10 just because of the upgrades, but I feel like they really didn't do a great job with the strategy side of things. I think Max had a chance to potentially win this race. You could say that George might have been potentially managing, and of course there have been quotes coming out, I think, from Shovlin, one of the Mercedes engineers, of course, that he was managing performance, but I do feel like Max could have put more pressure on George than what he already did. The battling with Hamilton didn't also help as well. Maybe Red Bull could have pulled the trigger maybe a little bit earlier to take advantage of the pace that Max had to push him forward, but that on the other hand could have probably been worse for him, considering he would have had tire deg, major issues there. It's a bit of a tricky one. I'm not obviously getting the big bucks paid to obviously strategize for them, but I feel like maybe a lap or two's difference, pitting before Russell regularly rather than after him, could have probably provided him with a little bit more oomph towards the end of the race, potentially. But it's if, buts, and maybes. Who knows, right? So, but I still give Red Bull an 8 overall. I think they still executed the week pretty darn well. Obviously, the best rating so far for me. To be honest, I think they did a good job. I think they did a good job overall. Now we move on to the big losers of this weekend, in my opinion. Ferrari. Charles gets a 5 and Lewis gets a 7. Now, I gave Charles a 5, even though I know that by his standards, and I think a lot of his fans' standards, it was a pretty torrid weekend, especially in the race. But I still think overall, really good performance in qualifying, coming second. Yes, with the aid of a crash by Max Verstappen, he probably would have ended up 3rd or 4th on the grid, depending on, of course, if Max finished his lap, as well as Kimi Antonelli. But I think generally still a good performance from him. And even with the issues he was plagued at the start of the race, with the deployment issues and turbo issues or whatever he was having at the start of the race, he was still managing really well. I would say he was a little bit aggressive, both him and Hamilton. I'm not gonna appropriate the blame to only one of them. Both were very aggressive with one another, especially in the starting laps, and just generally trying to stay ahead of other cars. And I think that caused their own downfall a little bit with the tire deck. Obviously, the tire deck was an issue throughout the race, so it wasn't even just because of that aggression, but that definitely didn't help it in any way, shape, or form. So for me, Charles gets a 5. I think he still did an okay race overall with obviously the car that he was given. I think that's the most important factor to keep in mind. And Lewis, I think, did a really good job overall of just, finishing 5th, to be honest. It could have easily been a 6th or a 7th had he also had those tire issues, right? And if he hadn't pit under the virtual safety car, maybe he would have pit like Charles for a 2-stop, and that would have put him in dire straits to like the likes of Piastri anyways. So I think a solid race from him. Definitely think maybe certain things I would have adjusted. I maybe would have still done the 3-stop, but maybe not put him on softs or do it under I don't know. It's a bit of a difficult one. I think the soft decision is still baffling my mind, which brings me to Ferrari. I gave them a 3. I mean, this weekend was a disaster as overall. Be it the setup wise, practice running. I mean, obviously, free practice 1, what they did was they used that opportunity to test a lot of different parts and pieces to do some cross testing, which is completely fine. But that obviously hindered them going into, practicing for the right thing, which is, of course, the race weekend, right? And they performed exceptionally poorly on the front of setup, on the front of running, in terms of just generally, how they prepared the car for the weekend. Of course, remember that one of the biggest issues that we noticed with the Ferraris was that their front end was really good, but that meant their rear end struggled. And what that meant is their power delivery, which is already very aggressive, caused a lot of degradation to their rears, hence why they were sliding out of corners quite heavily. It was always out of corners they were struggling. So Ferrari, to me, just generally struggled overall. And then on the strategy front, I think they could have done a better job, generally speaking, especially, telling both drivers to cool it down, manage their temperatures, manage their pace. Yes, they could have gone maybe a little bit slower, but at least they were giving them more tire life. And generally speaking, as well, with the strategy, the way they were bringing them in early every single time caused the team's downfall in terms of where they finished. I think it was a poor weekend from the team Ferrari as a whole, to be honest. And on the other hand, the ones leading the way and continuing the title charge is Mercedes. George Russell gets a solid 10 out of 10. I was considering maybe a 9.5 just because of how the weekend started, but I have to give it a 10. The way he's come back, managed the pace, shown a good level of performance. And I know a lot of people are blaming him for not lifting during the qualifying session. Those are the rules. He's abided by them. That's the only thing I can say. It's up to the FIA to change those rules. I feel like when it's a crash or anything, just like it is in IndyCar or whatever, yellow flag or caution or double waved yellow in this case, and or red flag immediately. It's as simple as that. There's nothing else you need to do. Crash happens, red flag. It's as simple as that. A car spinning out, red flag. As simple as that. So to me, that's Russell didn't do anything wrong there necessarily. I do believe as a individual, however, I would have still slowed down considerably seeing a car in the wall. But he says he didn't see the car in the wall, which I don't know if I want to believe him entirely on that, but hey, if he says he couldn't see Max, he couldn't see Max, is what I'll say. We don't have any, we can't really say otherwise, we can't really say otherwise. We're not in his seat to see what he was seeing, maybe if he had the visor cam, maybe we could say that maybe he did see it or something, who knows, right? Kimi Antonelli gets an 8 from me. I think it was an okay weekend from him overall, in qualifying. Obviously, by his own admission, he made a mistake in thinking it was a double waved yellows when it was only single waved yellows for Max's crash. He could have done the same as Russell and actually maybe got in pole or second place at the very least. But more than that, I feel like the reason why I'm giving him an 8 instead of a 9 or a 10, or more so a 9 to be honest, for finishing third, is because that first stint of his was a disaster show to watch, man. I don't know what he was doing. Too aggressive, too late on the brakes more often than not. I think I saw him go wide like 4 times at least, I think. Maybe 3, but I want to say it was 4. It was just poor to watch overall. So for me, I think Kimi Antonelli, that first stint kind of undid his race a little bit in the second and third stints accordingly. I think he could have finished second quite easily had he just been a little bit more cautious going into, the first couple of laps, in my personal opinion. Would have been less aggressive on the tires as well, giving him more life as well by the time he finished his stint, right? So overall, I think it's an 8. And Mercedes, I think, gets a 9 out of 10. Brought in reliability updates, which helped the team out massively, and their customers as well. Brought some bits and bobs to help out the car as well, generally in terms of circuit specification, which is absolutely fantastic. And just showed also having good strategy helps massively. With Russell and Antonelli, Russell especially, they were able to execute a good race, which helped them win easily, by far and away, and get a double podium finish. overall, I think, like I said in yesterday's video with the race review, Mercedes and Red Bull, I think, are our big winners, with Ferrari and Cadillac losing out the most. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. These are my rankings for the Austrian Grand Prix. We will be back in terms of F1 for the British Grand Prix in Silverstone in a few days' time. We'll be doing a race preview for it on Thursday. I'll see you guys then. Hopefully you guys have a lovely rest of your day, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be. Catch you guys in the next one. Until then, take it easy, everybody. Bye bye.